The maître d' barely looks at me before shaking his head, his polished accent crisp as cut glass. "I'm sorry, madam. There is no reservation under your name." The words land with such precision they could have been rehearsed, a dagger cloaked in politeness. For a moment, I stand perfectly still in the foyer of the Grant Club, the most exclusive dining establishment in Mayfair, surrounded by soft light, velvet drapery, and the faint clink of crystal. The weight of those words, simple, deliberate, crashes down, sharp and humiliating. "That's impossible." I hear the steel in my own voice as I force it into calm lines. "I was invited. My husband's family is already here." I keep my posture straight, my tone level. I will not let the first flicker of doubt show. The maître d's brows lift, the corners of his mouth twitching as if he is about to offer a diplomatic apology when I hear it. The voice. "Catherine Morgan." Lady Victoria's words slide through the air like silk over a blade. Soft, perfectly measured, but honed to cut. "Did you really think I would include you in tonight's dinner?" Ice stirs in my veins, but I do not turn at once. I know this game. Slowly, deliberately, I pivot on my heel, facing the woman who has spent the last 7 years reminding me that, in her world, I will never belong. Lady Victoria Morgan stands a few feet away, the very picture of aristocratic command. Her emerald silk gown sweeps the marble floor, her silver blonde hair drawn into a flawless chignon, not a strand daring to rebel. A diamond bracelet, old and heavy with history, glitters at her wrist, an heirloom of generations, a weapon of status. And just behind her sits my husband, Edward, rigid at the long table draped in white linen, his jaw tight, his hands folded neatly in his lap. Silent, always silent. Beside him, his sisters Charlotte and Amelia lean toward one another. Their lips curled into smirks they make no effort to hide. Victoria tilts her head, emerald eyes gleaming as she studies me. She waits for the crack, the tremor, the flinch. She wants me small. She has always wanted me small. I keep my face unreadable. I don't understand. Her smile curves wider, polished, but behind it I see the blade. She steps closer, her perfume sharp and commanding. "This is a family dinner, dear," she says sweetly, every syllable dipped in condescension. Then she lowers her voice, letting the cruelty slip through. "And a place like this is a bit out of your league, don't you think?" The insult slides under my skin, cold and deliberate. Around us, conversation still, the clink of silverware falters, heads turn ever so slightly. Judith Sinclair, no, Lady Victoria, knows exactly what she's doing, making a spectacle. She wants me to crumble under the gaze of London's elite, to confirm what she has whispered about me for years, that I am an outsider, an intruder, a mistake. Across the table, Edward does nothing. Charlotte raises her wine glass to hide her grin. Amelia nudges her sister, delight flickering in her eyes. I inhale slowly, exhale evenly. I will not break. What Lady Victoria doesn't realize, what none of them realize, is that I stopped being small a long time ago. My eyes shift, not to her, not to Edward, but back to the maître d'. My voice is steady, cool. "Would you be so kind as to ask Sir Alistair Grant to come out?" For the first time, Lady Victoria blinks. Her smile falters for a fraction of a second. It's fleeting, but I see it. She recovers with a soft, brittle laugh, raising her diamond-clad wrist in a delicate flourish. "Oh, please. Do you truly believe the owner of this club would leave his guests to attend to you?" I meet her gaze with unwavering calm. "Yes." And then, before the maître d' can move, the air shifts. A voice, smooth, deep, authoritative, cuts through the hush like a blade through silk. "Catherine." I turn, and there he is. Sir Alistair Grant. 63 years old, broad-shouldered, his salt and pepper hair swept neatly back, his navy suit tailored within an inch of perfection. A man who built the Grant Club from the ground up, transforming it into the most coveted dining room in London. A man who is not only respected but feared. His presence alone rearranges the air. Lady Victoria freezes, her hand tightening around the stem of her glass. Edward stiffens, colour draining from his face. Charlotte and Amelia fall utterly silent, their amusement extinguished in an instant. Alistair's sharp eyes land on me first. Unlike the others, there is no mockery in his gaze. No dismissal. Only recognition. "It's been far too long," he says, his voice carrying across the hushed dining room. I allow a small, knowing smile to curve my lips. "It has. But it seems there's been an oversight." I gesture lightly toward the table where the Morgans sit so comfortably. Apparently, I wasn't included in the reservation. Alistair's expression darkens. Just enough. He glances at Victoria, then Edward, then back to me. He understands. He always did. "That won't do at all," he says calmly, with a finality that brooks no argument. Victoria's composure flickers. She straightens, forcing her voice into its usual lilting confidence. "She's not on the list," she says quickly, defensively. "This restaurant does not simply make exceptions." "You're absolutely right, Lady Victoria," Alistair interrupts, silk over steel. A flicker of triumph crosses her face, the illusion of victory taking root. She lifts her chin, pleased. But then Alistair continues. "This establishment does not accept last-minute walk-ins." For a moment, Victoria's smile deepens, until he adds, with that same measured calm. "But Catherine Morgan is not a walk-in. She is family." The words hit like a thunderclap. The dining room stills. Charlotte's wine glass wobbles, nearly slipping from her manicured fingers. Amelia's lips part in shock, her eyes darting between me and Alistair. Edward pales, staring down at his plate. And Lady Victoria, Victoria who has orchestrated every humiliation, who has held the family like a puppet master, her mask cracks. Just slightly. But enough. A tightness in her jaw. A flicker in her eyes. The sudden knowledge that, for once, she does not control the board. The maître d' straightens immediately. "I'll have a table prepared at once, Mrs. Morgan." I catch the way Victoria's fingers curl into a fist against the tablecloth. I sit down gracefully, the napkin crisp in my lap, the candlelight warm against my skin. Around me, conversation begins to flow again, but the current has changed. The Morgans sit stiffly, their eyes sharp, but I am no longer invisible. I have won the first battle. Victoria lifts her glass, hiding the storm in her gaze behind a practiced smile. "Well," she muses, her voice light but strained, "I suppose it's only natural that someone like you would know people in the service industry." Her words glide across the table, precise and poisonous. Charlotte smirks faintly, Amelia hides a giggle. Edward says nothing. I let the comment hang, let the air sharpen around it. Then, with quiet deliberation, I set my glass down and tilt my head. "Tell me, Lady Victoria, who do you suppose funded Edward's first investment?" The silence is immediate, heavy. Charlotte gasps, fingers tightening around her napkin. Amelia stiffens. Edward's knuckles whiten around his fork. And Victoria, her eyes flash wide for just an instant, her polished mask cracking at the edges. "That's ridiculous," she says. Too quickly, too defensively. I smile. Slow. Sharp. Calculated. Is it? The weight of truth presses down, suffocating the illusion she has spun for years. Edward doesn't speak. He doesn't deny it. He can't. And for the first time, I see it. In Victoria's eyes. In Edward's silence. Fear. Lady Victoria's laugh rings out across the table. Too sharp, too brittle. "Really, Catherine? You expect us to believe that you financed Edward's career? My son built his future with his own brilliance, not on the charity of a woman who..." Her voice falters. For the first time, she hears herself slipping, and she stops short. I lean back in my chair, utterly calm, my fingers grazing the stem of my glass. "Charity." I repeat softly, letting the word roll between us. "No, Lady Victoria. Not charity. Investment." Charlotte stares, wide-eyed, at her brother. Amelia whispers something under her breath, but the sound dies before it reaches me. Edward's shoulders tense, his jaw rigid, but he cannot bring himself to meet my gaze. He knows. He remembers. I believed in him, I continue, my tone light but edged with steel. When no one else did. When banks turned him away, When so-called family dismissed his ideas as fanciful, I wrote the check. Without that money, your son would have nothing but dreams scribbled on napkins. The words hang heavy. Around us, diners pretend not to listen, though their ears are tuned sharply to every syllable. Lady Victoria's face flushes beneath the dimmed lights. Her mask is slipping, thread by thread. That's absurd, she hisses finally. You. Enough, Sir Alistair's voice slices cleanly through hers, commanding the entire dining room's attention. He looks between us, his expression inscrutable but his authority absolute. This is not the place for bickering. I smile faintly. Of course, Sir Alistair. But the damage is already done. Victoria's perfect world has cracked in front of an audience she cannot silence. Dinner continues in strained silence. Silverware clinks, wine flows, but the Morgans eat mechanically, their minds elsewhere. I taste nothing. I don't need to. The true feast is the unraveling happening before my eyes. Charlotte finally breaks. Edward, she whispers too loudly, is it true? His fork halts halfway to his mouth. His lips part, but no sound comes. Then, quietly, so quietly it barely carries, yes. Amelia gasps. Victoria's glass rattles as it meets the table too hard. My husband, the man who has allowed his mother to tear me apart for years, has just confirmed the truth she feared most. Edward, Victoria's voice is sharp, trembling with fury. How could you? But he doesn't answer. He doesn't dare. I dab my lips delicately with my napkin, rise slowly, smoothing the skirt of my dress with deliberate ease. I meet Edward's eyes, watching him flinch. There's nothing left to discuss. Catherine, he begins, his voice weak, imploring. I cut him off with a small, humorless laugh. Now you want to talk. After years of silence. After letting her, I tilt my chin toward Victoria, shred me to pieces, while you sat there and said nothing. He doesn't reply. He can't. I turn to Victoria. Her fury simmers beneath her porcelain mask, but her eyes betray her. Fear, raw and unrestrained. I'm leaving, I say, my tone quiet, final. And I'm taking everything you thought was yours with me. The air thickens. The dining room stills once again. Charlotte and Amelia exchange frantic glances, realization dawning. Edward pales, his Adam's apple bobbing as he struggles to swallow. Sir Alistair inclines his head toward me, the barest flicker of approval in his eyes. He knows what I've just done. I leave them there, frozen in shock. My heels strike the marble floor with measured grace as I walk through the dining room. Whispers bloom in my wake, curious eyes following, stories already forming. By the time I reach the heavy oak doors of the Grant Club, I am no longer humiliated, no longer the outsider. I am something far more dangerous, untouchable. The city outside greets me with cool night air, damp with London fog. Black cabs stream along the street, headlights blurring in the mist. I breathe deeply, the taste of freedom sharp and intoxicating. At home, the penthouse apartment in Kensington is silent, save for the faint hum of the city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The marble floors gleam beneath the soft glow of recessed lighting. It is Edward's pride, his sanctuary, his symbol of status. But the truth is one he has never dared admit, not even to himself. It is mine. Every inch of it. I move through the space slowly, deliberately, as though reclaiming it with each step. In his office, the air smells faintly of leather and ink, the shelves lined with neatly stacked files. The safe is tucked behind a mahogany panel, locked but not impenetrable. Edward never changed the code. Of course he didn't. The keypad beeps softly beneath my fingertips. The door swings open. Inside, stacks of documents, contracts, and bank statements wait like coiled serpents. At the very front lies the contract that matters most, the one with my signature and the sum that launched Edward Morgan's empire. I lift it gently, almost reverently. This paper is my shield, my sword. I take out my phone, snap a photograph, the flash illuminating the truth in cold, clinical light. Evidence. Proof. Power. When Edward finally returns home, the clock ticks past midnight. His footsteps falter as he steps inside, spotting the suitcase by the door, my coat neatly folded on top. He freezes in the doorway, his eyes darting from the bag to me. "Catherine," he breathes, his voice uneven. "What are you doing?" I tilt my head, studying him. "I think you already know." His jaw clenches. "If you think you can walk away with half." My laugh is low, deliberate, sharp as glass. "Half? Oh, Edward. You really should read your contracts more carefully." The color drains from his face. I turn toward the door, suitcase in hand, my steps light. "I finally see my worth," I tell him softly. "And I'm leaving." I don't look back. For the first time in 7 years, I am free. The first night away from Kensington, I barely slept. The hotel room in Covent Garden was small, its view nothing but brick and rain-slick alleyways, but it was mine. No whispers behind silk curtains, no weight of Morgan expectations pressing on my shoulders. Just silence. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled hum of London outside. Freedom tastes different at first, sharp, bitter, almost frightening. You think you'll feel light, but instead there's a heaviness, the sudden awareness that every step you take is truly yours, with no one to blame if you fall. I welcomed it. The next morning, I walked the Strand with a scarf knotted tightly at my throat, the cold air bracing, the city alive with its usual urgency. I stopped at a cafe tucked between 2 bookshops, ordered tea, and for the first time in years, no one looked at me as if I were an imposter. The barista smiled, took my coins, and moved on. I was invisible in the best possible way. I spent the day in a solicitor's office, the contract photograph clutched in my phone like a loaded weapon. The young associate's eyes widened as he read, and I knew then I had done the right thing. "Mrs. Morgan," he said carefully, "this changes everything." No, this confirms everything, I thought. By the end of the week, papers were in motion. My name, my money, my control. The Morgans had built their house on sand, and I had just taken away the tide walls. But freedom isn't only legal. It's emotional, too. And that's harder to claim. One evening, I found myself drawn back toward Mayfair. Not to the Grant Club, though I could have walked through its doors now without hesitation, but to the street outside. The night glowed with soft lamps, black cabs sliding by like dark phantoms. I stood on the pavement, staring at the ornate facade, remembering Lady Victoria's smirk, Edward's silence, Charlotte and Amelia's stifled laughter. Rage simmered low, but it didn't consume me this time. It focused me. "Catherine." The voice startled me. I turned to find Sir Alister Grant himself stepping from a car, his tailored coat brushing his knees, his presence commanding even against the London night. "You've caused quite a stir," he said, amusement flickering in his sharp grey eyes. I met his gaze evenly. "Did you expect anything less?" A smile ghosted across his lips. "Not from you." He offered me his arm, a gesture both old-fashioned and powerful. "Walk with me." We moved down the street, his stride steady, mine deliberate. "Victoria Morgan is furious," he said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Her empire thrives on perception. Last night, you cracked that porcelain facade. Do you understand what that means?" "I do," I replied softly. "It means she's vulnerable." He glanced at me, approval hidden in the lines of his face. "Good. Hold on to that. Because she won't stop." The warning lingered with me long after we parted. Days stretched into weeks. My solicitor worked quickly, and Edward's world began to tilt. Accounts frozen. Contracts scrutinized. Quiet inquiries rippling through the city, where whispers matter more than headlines. Edward called twice, each time his voice more desperate, less composed. I didn't answer. But Lady Victoria was not idle. One evening, as I left the solicitor's office, I saw her waiting across the street. Even wrapped in furs, with her chauffeur idling nearby, she looked like a queen surveying a battlefield. Our eyes met, and for the briefest moment, her mask slipped. Not rage. Not disdain. Fear. She stepped forward, her heels striking the pavement like gunfire. "Catherine," she said, her voice smooth but taut, "this game you're playing, it will end badly for you." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Lady Victoria, this isn't a game. This is justice." And for the first time, you're not holding the cards. Her jaw tightened. You think the city cares about contracts? About your little investments? Reputation, my dear, that's what matters. And yours is fragile. I leaned closer, my voice barely above a whisper. Reputation. Do you really want me to remind London how Edward funded his empire? How the Morgans live on borrowed glory? Shall we let the society pages print that story? Her lips pressed into a thin line. She turned sharply, sliding into the backseat of her waiting car. The door slammed shut, but not before I saw it, that flicker of doubt, raw and unguarded. I walked away smiling. Yet freedom is not without loneliness. In the quiet of the hotel room, I sometimes stared at my reflection too long, searching for the woman I used to be. She was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, stronger, yes, but at what cost? I pushed the thought aside by building. I began looking at properties, not penthouses in Kensington but places where I could create something entirely mine. A townhouse in Chelsea, its brick weathered but strong, caught my eye. I walked through its empty rooms, my heels echoing, and imagined filling it with warmth, laughter not borrowed from others but made by me. It would take time. But I had time. Then came the letter. Delivered by hand, embossed with the Morgan crest. I almost threw it away. But curiosity gnawed. I broke the seal. Catherine. We need to talk. Things have gone too far. Come to the house in Belgravia tomorrow evening. For the family's sake. Edward. For the family's sake. I almost laughed. But a spark of intrigue burned. Why now? Why reach out, after months of silence and disdain? Desperation, perhaps. Or something darker. I folded the letter, slipped it into my bag, and looked out the hotel window at the London night. The fog curled like secrets around the street lamps. The Morgans wanted me back in their house. They had no idea that was the last place they should want me. Belgravia at night is a theatre of shadows. White stucco townhouses gleam beneath the gas lamps, their wrought-iron balconies casting jagged silhouettes across the pavement. The Morgan residence looms among them, its black door polished to a mirror shine, brass knocker catching the lamplight. I stand at the threshold, the letter in my hand, wondering which part of me is walking inside, the woman who once begged for their acceptance, or the one who now holds their ruin in her pocket. The butler, stiff in his livery, admits me with a bow too shallow to be sincere. Mrs. Morgan, he intones, though the hesitation before the name betrays him. I step past without a word, my heels clicking against the marble foyer. They are waiting in the drawing room. Edward by the fireplace, his posture taut, hands clasped behind his back. Lady Victoria in her throne-like chair, emerald silk again, as if armor could be woven from fabric. Charlotte and Amelia lounge on the sofa, glasses of wine in hand, their faces masks of forced civility. Catherine, Edward begins, his tone rehearsed, conciliatory. Thank you for coming. I let the silence stretch before answering. I nearly didn't. Lady Victoria's eyes narrow, her smile brittle. And yet here you are. Perhaps you've realized this little rebellion has gone far enough. Rebellion? I echo softly, moving toward the center of the room. That's an interesting word for reclaiming what's mine. Charlotte shifts uncomfortably. Amelia hides a smirk behind her glass, but her fingers tremble on the stem. They know the ground beneath them is unsteady. Edward steps forward. Catherine, please. This constant hostility, it helps no one. We can find an arrangement. A settlement that. I laugh, low and sharp. A settlement. Edward, you forget, I'm not negotiating from weakness. You are. His jaw tightens. Victoria's bracelet glints as she lifts her hand, a queen silencing a court. Enough, she snaps. Let's not pretend, Catherine. You don't belong in this family, never have. You were useful, a purse when my son needed one, but now you are nothing but an inconvenience. And inconveniences, her smile curls, can be removed. The words hang in the air, chilling. I study her, unflinching. Are you threatening me, Lady Victoria? Her eyes glimmer, not with fear, but with calculation. A warning, she purrs. London society is fragile. Reputation is everything. One whisper, one headline, and you'll be the woman who schemed her way into fortune and tore a respectable family apart. Do you think the Times won't print it? Or Tatler, for that matter? Charlotte and Amelia exchange nervous glances. Edward stares into the fire, silent, complicit. I let the pause linger. Then, with deliberate calm, I reach into my bag and draw out a slim folder. I place it on the mahogany table, sliding it forward with a fingertip. The leather cover gleams under the chandelier. What's this? Edward asks, voice hoarse. Evidence, I say simply. Contracts. Bank statements. Signatures. Proof that every brick of your empire was laid with my money. Proof that your so-called respectability rests on fraud. If reputation is your weapon, Lady Victoria, mine is truth. And the truth cuts deeper. Victoria's mask slips for the briefest second. Her hand clenches on the armrest, knuckles whitening. Charlotte gasps softly. Amelia sets her glass down too quickly, the crystal ringing against the table. Edward finally turns, desperation etched across his face. Catherine, please. Don't do this. Think of the family. The family. My voice sharpens. Where was family when your mother humiliated me at every turn? When your sisters treated me as entertainment? When you, Edward, stood by and let them shred me to pieces? His mouth opens, but no words come. I lean closer, my tone lowering to a blade's edge. I won't be silent anymore. Not for you. Not for her. Victoria rises slowly, the emerald silk whispering against the carpet. She towers, regal and venomous. You foolish girl, she hisses. Do you think society will take your side? Against me. Against us. I smile, serene. I don't need society. I only need the truth. And if you doubt that, Lady Victoria, ask yourself why you're trembling. Her lips part, a retort forming, but no sound emerges. The room thickens with silence. The Morgans, so sure of their dominance, sit exposed, fragile under the weight of what I hold. Then, quietly, I gather the folder back into my bag. Consider this mercy, I say, straightening. For now. Edward takes a step forward, panic in his eyes. Catherine, where are you going? I meet his gaze. Home. To a life that isn't built on lies. I turn, my heels echoing across the marble as I leave the drawing room. Behind me, voices rise, Victoria's furious hiss, Charlotte's anxious whisper, Amelia's sharp intake of breath. Edward calls my name once, but it falls flat against the grand, hollow house. The butler opens the door silently, his expression unreadable. The cold Belgravia night rushes to meet me, sharp and clean. I breathe it in, each lungful burning with something that feels dangerously like triumph. As I step into the waiting cab, I glance back once. Through the window, I see Lady Victoria standing rigid, her hand gripping the curtain, her face pale beneath the lamplight. She thought she could erase me. She was wrong. The cab pulls away, wheels humming over wet cobblestones. London blurs past, the white facades, the iron gates, the gleaming lamps, and with every passing second, the chains that bound me loosen further. For the first time in years, I am not walking out of a Morgan house in shame. I am walking out in victory. The townhouse in Chelsea smelled of paint and possibility. Sunlight filtered through tall sash windows, illuminating bare wooden floors and dust motes swirling like secrets. It was nothing like Kensington's marble mausoleum or Belgravia's suffocating grandeur. It was mine. I walked from room to room with the estate agent trailing nervously behind, chattering about renovations and square footage. I barely listened. I was imagining, bookcases lining the walls, the scent of fresh coffee drifting from a kitchen not designed for show but for living, laughter echoing from rooms not haunted by silence. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to picture a future that belonged only to me. Within weeks, the townhouse became my refuge. I filled it with color, deep green velvet, framed prints of Turner's stormy seascapes, shelves stacked with books that had nothing to do with Edward's pretentious art collections. I opened the windows wide to let the city in, The rattle of buses, the chatter of passers-by, the rhythm of London herself. At night, I would sit by the fire with a glass of wine, watching the flames dance, and feel something I hadn't in years: peace. But peace does not mean silence. News of the Morgans drifted toward me like smoke. The city whispered first. Edward's partners, once so eager to align with his ventures, began to withdraw. The contracts I had pulled into the light revealed fissures, and soon enough, those fissures widened into cracks. Investment houses turned cautious. Invitations to private clubs dried up. Deals collapsed. Then society murmured. Victoria's once impeccable luncheons were sparsely attended. Charlotte and Amelia, once fixtures at Mayfair soirees, found themselves excluded from guest lists. Rumours swirled, of debts, of betrayals, of a matriarch losing her grip. No one said my name aloud, but I heard it in the pauses, the careful glances, the sudden hush when I entered a room. I didn't need to strike the final blow. They were undoing themselves. One evening, as I arranged flowers in my new sitting room, a letter arrived. Heavy paper, embossed crest. From Edward. I considered tearing it up unopened, but curiosity prevailed. Catherine, I know you won't believe me, but I never wanted things to end this way. Mother is furious, the girls are adrift, and I am lost. Please, meet me. If not for reconciliation, then for closure. I folded the letter neatly, set it aside, and poured myself another glass of wine. Closure, I thought, was a luxury for those who hadn't already moved on. Yet the past doesn't vanish. It lingers like perfume long after its wearer has left the room. Sometimes, late at night, I caught myself wondering if Edward ever lay awake in Belgravia, staring at the ceiling, realizing too late the price of silence. I never answered his letter. Instead, I answered my own life. I hired a contractor, turned the ground floor of the townhouse into a little café-bookshop. Page by page, brick by brick, it became a sanctuary not just for me but for others. Young writers scribbled in notebooks at corner tables, neighbors browsed shelves of novels, tourists stumbled in and lingered over cappuccinos. The walls hummed with voices, laughter, stories. Sir Alistair Grant visited once, leaning on his cane, his sharp eyes softening as he took in the sight. "You've built something," he said, his voice warm with respect. "I've built myself," I replied. He nodded, as if that were the answer he'd been waiting for. The Morgans, I heard, had retreated. Belgravia still stood, but its windows were shuttered more often than lit. Victoria's emerald gowns were seen rarely, her sharp laughter absent from soirees. Charlotte married in haste to a solicitor with more ambition than charm. Amelia drifted abroad, chasing relevance she could not hold. And Edward, he remained, pale and diminished, a man who had once leaned on my fortune and mistook it for his own strength. London moved on. It always does. One afternoon, as rain drummed against Chelsea rooftops, I sat in my cafe watching strangers bustle through the door, coats dripping, cheeks flushed. A little girl tugged her mother toward a shelf, her eyes wide with wonder at the rows of books. I smiled, heart lifting. This, I thought. This is family. Not bound by blood or name, but by choice, by kindness, by presence. When I locked up that night, I stood on the steps, the damp air cool against my skin, the city spread before me. For years, I had lived in houses that weren't mine, played roles written by others, bowed under the weight of a name that never welcomed me. Now, I stood alone, and it was enough. No, more than enough. Because I had walked away from Edward, from Victoria, from all of them, not broken but whole. I had faced their cruelty, their erasure, and I had survived. Better, I had flourished. The Morgans would be a footnote, a whisper, a lesson in the cost of arrogance. And I, Catherine Morgan, would be the author of my own story at last. 2 years later, the café-bookshop in Chelsea had become more than a business. It was a haven. Locals called it Morgan's Corner, a name that made me smile every time I heard it. Not because of the family I had left behind, but because I had redefined what Morgan meant. It was no longer tied to Edward, or Victoria, or the poisonous history of Belgravia. It was mine. Each morning, I unlocked the door just as the city began to stir. The shelves were lined with stories from every corner of the world, the smell of fresh coffee drifting through the air, the chatter of customers warming the rooms. I had surrounded myself with life, laughter, and the quiet hum of people who came not to judge or diminish me, but to belong. Sometimes, I caught sight of myself in the window's reflection. Hair streaked with silver, eyes lined by years of both pain and resilience. For a moment, I would barely recognize her, the woman who once trembled under Lady Victoria's stare. But then I would see it, the strength in her posture, the serenity in her smile. A woman who had chosen herself. The Morgans, meanwhile, had faded. Their name appeared in the papers less and less, and when it did, it was never flattering. Whispers of debt, of fractured alliances, of a matriarch whose influence no longer commanded fear. Charlotte's marriage crumbled within a year. Amelia drifted from city to city, chasing relevance. And Edward, he was a ghost now, pale and diminished, moving through London like a man carrying his own shadow. I never saw Lady Victoria again, though once, at a charity gala, I caught a glimpse of her from across the room. She looked smaller somehow, her gown too heavy for her frame, her eyes sharp but hollow. She didn't approach me. She couldn't. On the anniversary of my freedom, I closed the cafe early and walked along the Thames. The city lights shimmered on the water, and the air carried that peculiar London blend of rain, history, and promise. I leaned against the railing, watching the currents shift, and felt a calmness I had once thought impossible. I had lost so much once, respect, belonging, even the illusion of family. But what I had gained was greater. I had gained myself. I realized then that freedom isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or triumph. It slips in quietly, like dawn breaking after a long night, until you look around and realize the darkness has lifted. As the bells of St. Paul's tolled across the river, I whispered the words I had carried like a vow since the night it all began. I will never again live invisible. I will live as my own anchor, my own story. And for the first time, the vow felt less like defiance and more like truth. Because I was Catherine Morgan. And I was finally, irrevocably, free.